Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Just getting a slightly early start here. Just checking to make sure everything is displaying properly. And we'll be getting into the training shortly. Now, please be aware that if for some reason you're not able to stay throughout the whole training, you can go to our YouTube channel here and see this training will be recorded, so you can come back later. You can see the previous week's trainings as well. If you want to view any of the guides on a specific feature, you can go to virtualpbx.com, mouse over support, and then click on the dash support. Scroll down, and you'll get to the individual guides with screenshots and instructions. All right, right now you see our dash login page, which is the dash dash virtualpbx.com. And it asks you for your username, which is your email address, your password, and your account name, which is typically your company name. Now, if for some reason when you signed up or your admin forgot to click on send credentials to you, you can always click on forgot your info. And we do need your email address still. And then we need either the account name or an account phone number. And then you click on reset password. The system will send you an email and have you change your password to something you can remember. And then it will log you out of the system, basically to make you log back in. So you know your new password. You can click on the Remember Me box there, so that way you don't have to memorize yet another password in your life. Now, if it's the first time you've ever logged into Dash, you'll actually be taken to a page that looks like this. And the Dash wizard will pop up just to give you a brief tour about this page and what you can do here. The main thing people change here is typically the time zone. Possibly they change their email or password. As an admin, you can also have this account link here. And this is where you would change the time zone for your entire account, which is also typically the main thing that's changed. Now, I'm currently logged in here on a test account, which has been around for a while. However, for live accounts, over here on the left, so underneath where it says user, there'll be a separate section for billing information, and that's where you could update your credit card information, input billing contacts, and see your service plan. Now, when you're done here and you're done with the wizard, you would click close up here at the top right, and then you get back to our dashboard page. Now, on the left, we have the navigation for the core Dash features. Generally speaking, these are all available to you every plan. There's one exception, or a couple exceptions depending on the plan you have, right? So some things will show up on the left as you upgrade your plans. At the top here, if you click on your name, again, you get to that account page information. This here, D&D, right, do not disturb. If you toggle this, that puts your user in do not disturb mode, meaning calls to you go to voicemail. So you want to be careful about toggling this on. Question mark icon takes you to a couple things. One, the chat with us. This will open up a chat window so you can speak to a support person and they can walk you through whatever feature you're having issues with. The online store, this goes to store.virtualpbx.com, so you can order a physical VoIP phone, the desktop soft phone app from us, as well as routers or headsets. The Learn More link here, this will go to the support pages, so you can go to individual guides. And if you have a web phone on your user, there'll be another link here for the web phone, which goes to webphone.virtualpbx.net. that allows you to use Chrome or Firefox to make and receive calls right from the browser. This three horizontal line icon or the hamburger icon, just a menu icon. These go to additional features of Dash. These are mostly for admins. The one exception for that is a user portal. That's for every user on the account. They each have their own. Some of these are also paid features, like the webhooks, for example. And then we have the logout icon. Now here in the center, we've got total users, right? These are all the people on your account who are making and receiving calls. We have a total of 39 devices and their breakdown. So we got, right, cell phone, pretty self-explanatory. Most people know what that is. Web phone, which I just talked about. Again, Chrome or Firefox to make and receive calls. This is actually a special type of soft phone, right? Software application uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. This could be the VirtualPBX soft phone app, either on mobile or desktop, as well as a third-party application. The SIP phone, right here, this is a physical VoIP phone that sits on a desk, right? So you can pick up a handset and dial out. Again, uses your internet connection. And then we have a landline as well. Now you notice here I have 11 unregistered devices. So Dash can tell when a VoIP device is properly connected to it. And if it's not properly connected, it shows up as an unregistered device. And that just means we can't make or receive calls from that device. Next up, we have total numbers, right? Total phone numbers on the account. These are all customer-facing phone numbers, right? So your customers dial these numbers to get to your account. And we've got a couple of breakdowns here. So assigned numbers and spare numbers, right? Assigned number means you're using it. It goes someplace, right? It could be one of your main numbers, like over here on the right. It could be going directly to a user. It could be going to one of your ring groups, one of your ACD queues, etc. A spare number means it's on your account, but you're not using it, right? So if someone tries to dial it, they're not getting anywhere. Now, depending on your plan, you have anywhere from 1 to 15 phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price, right? Your allotment for phone numbers. If you go over that, you're going to be charged anywhere from $1.99 to $4.99 per month per phone number. Now, your spare numbers still count towards your allotment. So obviously on this account, I am paying a lot for phone numbers, right, since I have a total of 59. And so if I want to save some money, I can get rid of some of these spare numbers since I'm not actively using them right now. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Then we have another breakdown here between US toll-free and USDID. All right, so US toll-free, 800 number, right? 888-877, all the way down to 833. That's good in North America, essentially US and Canada for the most part. USDID, US local phone number, right? So a number in Las Vegas, Nevada, or you can have a number in Dallas, Texas, Rochester, New York, what have you. You can also have international numbers on your Dash account. If you're interested in acquiring an international phone number, you need to email our porting team. That's PORTING at virtualpbx.com. And they'll need to know the city and country that you're interested in having a phone number in. And they'll let you know if there are additional requirements. Like some countries require a proof of presence within the city that you're interested in getting a number in. Others don't care. Others have even more stricter requirements, like proof of incorporation or some such. All right, conference bridges, I have a total of 7. This just means I have enabled conferencing as a user feature on 7 of my users, right? So 7 people can host a conference. Over here on the right, main numbers, right? These 3 numbers, right? These are my general phone numbers. These all behave the same way, right? Meaning they route the same way. They're all going to have the same main greeting, for example. Conference numbers, you can have multiple conference numbers. This is oops, did not mean to click. Anyway, so everyone who's going to join a conference, whether they're on your staff or outside your company. They all have to call one of these conference numbers, and then they'll enter in the conference room number they're going to join, and then a PIN number. Fax box number, you can have one by default. So this enables faxing on the account, and this is a number that you use to receive faxes on. We have company directory. This downloads a text file, so it shows all your users with their extension numbers. Next up, we've got the cell phone directory. This downloads a file to use, and that's to be used with the VirtualPBX desktop cell phone application. So you would download this file, then you would then upload it to the desktop cell phone application, and you can then see all your coworkers. Right? They'll all be contacts within the app, and you can see their status in relation to the cell phone application. Right? So I can see, oh, Bob is actually on a call, so there's no point in me trying to call him right now. Over here, we got the store discount code. So just for being a Dash customer, you get a discount in our web store. And then lastly, we have the account realm. Now, this account realm is used in a couple things. One is part of the information you need to program a third-party application or device, right? So if you're going to use a cell phone app from Counterpath, that's another company that they produce several different cell phone applications, you would need that realm as part of that process to get that application working. And the other reason you would need the account realm is to send a fax out. So on Dash, currently sending a fax out is via email, right? So you create an email message. In the to field of that email, you put the plus sign, the number 1, and then the area code and phone number that you're faxing to. Get the little @ symbol, and then you put your account realm. And then you simply attach a PDF or a TIFF file to the email, and you click send. There's no point in typing in the body of the email because that's not going through. The system just uses the email to get the PDF or TIFF file, right? It basically grabs the first attachment it sees and then sends that out via fax. Nothing else from the email gets sent out. Just one attachment only. All right, up here at the top, we got the caller ID for the company. You can select any of your main numbers. Unfortunately, my streaming software doesn't always show the pull downs. But whatever number you select here, this becomes your default for a couple other features on the account. So that's something to be aware of. Then you've got the company caller ID name or CNAME. This is, you can input text up to 15 characters, including spaces and special characters. And this will be transmitted as part of your outbound caller ID when you make a call from a VoIP phone. Now, after you click Save Changes there at the bottom, the CNAME information gets transmitted to the other carriers who support CNAME. They will update their servers. That can take up to 3 business days to complete. And then once you make an outbound call, as long as your call goes through carriers who support CNAME, the CNAME information will get sent to your destination. What that means is, however, there are some carriers out there who do not support CNAME. Right? That's their business decision. We can't make them change their minds. So if a call happens to route through them, your CNAME information will not reach your destination. Now, this is typically something that comes up with smaller or regional carriers. Right? The big names that you've all heard of, they all support CNAME. One other thing to keep in mind is in terms of calls to cell phones, right? Your cell phone carrier decides what gets shown on your phone, on your cell phone. As in some cases, I believe like Verizon and AT&T, they have CNAME as a paid feature, right? So you can pay like $10 a month and you can get CNAME showing up on your cell phone. Now, for all the carriers who support CNAME, it's not a super high priority for them, right? Their first concern is connecting the call and then the caller ID information. And then in distant third is the CNAME information. So if they're having heavier than expected call volume, right, the CNAME information may not go through. It's just one of those little caveats to be aware of. All right, down here, we've got the company emergency information, or E911. Right, this is address you want associated with this number. This is in case one of your VoIP phone users picks up their phone, dials 911, This address is the information that is transmitted to emergency services. So one, you want to make sure it's accurate, and you can set up different addresses for each of your different phone numbers, and then your VoIP phones can select which one to use for E911 purposes. Hold music. So on Dash, you can upload your own video files. It will accept .wav, .wav, and .mp3 files. You want to make sure that they're recorded in mono, not in stereo, and that they're under 1 megabyte in size. You can sometimes get larger files to upload successfully, but generally speaking, on a consistent basis, you want to keep it under 1 megabyte. Now, in terms of hold music, Dash actually defines that as once a call has come into a user, and then that so connects to a user, and then the user presses hold on their VoIP phone. That's when this hold music file will play. All right. Up until then, the inbound caller, they're just hearing ringing. Again, if you make any changes, So to upload a file, you would click on upload. You find the file on your computer. And then you would click on this, the little blue and white up arrow. And then after it's done uploading, you click on Save Changes. All right, so next up, we've got hours, which is actually a subset of the main number. So we're just going to go to the main number. And at the top here, we got your main company numbers. Now, if you don't want to use one of these numbers, right, you need it for a different purpose, you can simply unassign the number. And now it's no longer a main number, it's now a spare number. You can add from any of your existing numbers back to the account, or back to as a main number. So I can put back in the, say, the 702 number, and then it'll show up here. Any of these numbers, you have a little gear icon, so you can adjust the caller ID, right? So you can put the CNAME up here, and you've got the option here to accept inbound CNAME information. Right, the E911, so I can put in a different address for this phone number. And prepend is a VoIP feature. You can add additional caller ID information in front of the phone number. So basically, I type in text here. This text will show up on a VoIP phone's displays as part of the caller ID, right, to give my staff a heads up about what the number might, or what the call might be about. You can also buy numbers, right? You can buy local or toll-free. So for local, you need to enter in an area code. 23. Oops, nothing there. I don't even remember if that's a valid. Let's try that again. 0323. So see here, you'll see a list of available phone numbers. If you scroll down, more will populate. And then you would simply click on add it to your cart. You see the number there. You can remove it by clicking on the little trash can, or you can click buy numbers. And you can add multiple at once if you want to. And then you see here, it's available as a main number now. So any place you can add a number, so directly to a user, on a ring group, a queue, you can do the same process. You can buy a new number and it adds it directly to that number, or to that location, excuse me. All right. And then any place you don't want to use it anymore, you would just unassign. Right. Office hours strategy. So you can be 24-hour open office, meaning you're taking calls 24/7, or you can go custom office hours. And then each day of the week you're open, you put a check mark in front of, and then in these boxes here to the right, you put your open hours in 24-hour or military time. Down here at the bottom, which I don't know if you can see on YouTube, but there's a box here for are you closed for lunch? If you put a check mark there, then you would enter in your lunch hours there. For office holidays, put a check mark here on the right if you're closed for holidays. Then over here on the right, you have the option to add holiday, right? Single day, date range, and advanced. So single day is like we have here for President's Day, right? So when you click add holiday, it creates a new row. So you give it a name, and then you put the month and the day, and then you'll click on Save Changes. For date range, just like what we have here for Christmas, right? So start date is December 23rd, end date is December 26th. The main caveat for the date range is, if you notice here, there's no year indicator, so you want to avoid a date range that includes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And then here we've got the advanced option spelled out. I just called it a retreat. You pick the month, and then you've got options here like 1st through 4th as well as last, and then day of the week. And that way, so basically I'm saying every first Friday in July, our company is on holiday, and we're going, company picnic. All right. Incoming call handling. So notice here I have open hours, and I also have a holiday hours. If I had changed my office hours strategy to be company or customized, right, I also have after hours. But this is all for your main numbers, right? So I have like, what's it, 4 main numbers now, or 5? 4, right? So these 4 main numbers during my open hours, right now, they're all calls are coming in and going to the virtual receptionist. If I click on this is a link, and now I see my virtual receptionist. So on my left is the main menu, right? So these are buttons people press on their phone to navigate through the system. And then on the right here are my greeting options. So to add options, right? So let's say I want to add 5, right? I would click add route, and then where it says the button press, this is a pull down, and you would select 5, and then you would select where it would go. Let's go up here. Here we go. So you can send it to Smart Directory. You can send it to any of your users on the account. You can send it to any of your call queues. You can send it to a specific device, so like the cell phone. You can send it to a media file, so basically play a greeting. You can send it to a call queue, and you can send it to a ring group. The advanced call flows, this is so you can actually create submenus on Dash now. So you can say, hey, press 1 for English and press 2 for Spanish. And both of those options would go to a submenu where, again, you would have a new greeting play and new menu options. If you wanted to do that, that's what the advanced call flows are for. And then you have the various voicemail boxes. Over here on the right are your greeting options. Text-to-speech, you simply type in what you want the system to say. You would click Update. You click Save, and then Save Changes over here. Now, one thing about the text-to-speech, it's limited to about 350 characters, depending on how complicated your greeting is. That's something that our engineering team is looking into. But that just creates a computerized robotic voice greeting. You can upload your own file. Again, find the file on your computer. Again, .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. All right, so you would choose a file, click Update, Save, and Save Changes. If you already have greetings on the account, you'll see a full list from this pull down, and you can choose any of those existing files. You can record it over the phone. Now, by default, the system wants you to use a VoIP phone to record this greeting. That's a security feature. However, right down here under settings, you can see right now I have allow outside recording. I have that set to on. Right, so by default, it's set to off. But if I want to use a cell phone or a landline, I just make sure that's on. So then now any phone can call in. Then you call your main number that goes to the virtual receptionist, and then you enter this PIN number. Now this PIN number is specific to this time of day, right? So it's only good for my open hours. For instance, since this is a 24-hour open office, right, it's good all the time. But if I wanted to change my holiday greeting, right, my holiday system or virtual receptionist, it has its own PIN number, and it's only effective when the system is in holiday mode, right? So during my normal day, I can't change my holiday message, recording it over the phone, unless I put the system into holiday mode. Also, one thing to keep in mind about recording it over the phone, if you already have a greeting in place, right? So you have greeting A, it's currently playing, and you call in and record over the phone, the system doesn't change the name or doesn't save greeting A. Instead, the file name greeting A stays the same, but you overwrite the content when you call in and enter this PIN number. So that's also something to be aware of if greeting A is something you typically want to use or reuse later. All right, professional recording services, excuse me. We've partnered with another company called Snap Recordings. When you click on order, this will take you to their website. They have 80 to 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from. They have multiple versions of English, French, and Spanish, so you can do multilingual greetings as well. They handle their own pricing and their own billing, and they deliver to you typically via email. They can also do express service, so they can cut down on the turnaround time. But then once you get the file from them, you would simply choose from your existing or upload your own file, and add it to your system. All right, settings, number of retries on missed dial. Basically, how many times can someone enter in an incorrect option? All right, and then the system will replay the greeting on a missed try. And then after that last option, or this last try, so after 2 tries, or 2 retries, that means 3 total tries, the system will either send them to the default route, or if there's no default route, it will end the call. Likewise, if someone calls in and doesn't press anything, right, the greeting ends, right, it'll wait a couple heartbeats, the greeting will play again, wait a couple heartbeats, play a 3rd time, and said, hey, we didn't hear a valid entry, and then either send you to the default route, or if there's no default route, end the call. Dialing timeout. So after when a person calls in and they press a menu option, or they press a digit on the phone, let's say they press 4, the dialing timeout will tell the system to wait 1 second. If there's no other button pressed, assume that the inbound caller is done. And then in this case, send them to where menu option 4 goes. All right, allow outside recording. I mentioned that under the recorded over the phone, but essentially it allows you to record main greetings from a cell phone or a landline. Again, by default, this is set to off, just as a security feature. And then this other option here, allow dialing to extensions. So if this is off, that means when an inbound caller calls in, they can only press a menu option or get to the default route. They're not going to be able to enter an extension number, even if they know it. Right? If you turn it on, then they can get to an extension. Now, a couple of caveats. In terms of destinations for the menu options, we'd recommend against sending it directly to a device, right? So to someone's specific cell phone or a media file, because by default, what happens is, like if no one picks up at that cell phone, right, the call ends. Right? You may not get to the cell phone's voicemail. depending on the timing involved of when that cell phone voicemail picks up. All right, for a media file, once the media file ends, and by default, the call ends after that media file is done. As far as default route, I don't typically recommend this as well, and that's mostly just because of robodialers, right? Robodialers can call in, typically on a toll-free number. They'll hang out, hear your greeting play a couple of times, and then they'll go to your default route. So that means they're taking up time in terms of that time within the greetings, but also whatever your default route is, right? So they can ring into one of your staff members or getting to a voicemail box and taking up time recording a message on your voicemail boxes. Now, any changes you make here, you want to click Save, and then you want to click Save Changes here where under Incoming Call Handling. All right, next option, call comes in, I'm offering it to Bob, and if Bob isn't able to answer, goes to the virtual receptionist. This virtual receptionist, that same one we were just looking at, right, because it's the same time of day. But this, you have different options to choose it. Now this routing option is essentially you are giving a staff member or multiple staff members a chance to answer the call first. If they're not able to, then the inbound caller gets the virtual receptionist where they can enter in a menu option or an extension number, right? So it just an opportunity for a live person to pick up the call initially. So you can select groups, users, you can send it to a call queue, you can send it to a device, you can send it to a media file, but generally speaking, the options that most people would use for this would be going to a group, a user, or a queue. Third option is similar in terms of you can offer it to a user, a group, queue, media file, etc. But if they're not able to pick up, they instead go to a voicemail box. Now this one also has an additional option, very bottom here, right? Skip to voicemail, meaning call comes in and goes straight to voicemail. So I typically see this on a holiday menu, right? Just saying, hey, we're closed for the holidays, just send the caller straight to voicemail, just save some time. On this last one here, this is just going to my advanced call flows to one of my other attendants, typically not used. Basically, if you're going to use one of these other attendants, you're better off making this other attendant your main number scenario versus having it as a separate auto attendant. All right, holidays, you have the same options. Just keep in mind that the virtual receptionist, right, is different for each of your different times of day. Right, so after hours would have its own virtual receptionist, etc. So that way you can set up individual greetings for after hours as well as different menu options. All right, in conference number, all right, you can add from spare numbers, you can buy numbers here. You can also unassign if you don't want to use a number. The custom greeting is a text-to-speech reading, and you can just type in what you wanted to say. If you don't enable it, then when people call in, the system will still prompt them. They'll also say, welcome to the conference. Please enter your conference room number. Again, you can also buy numbers if you needed to. One thing to keep in mind for the main conference number is once you have assigned the conference number, then you can enable the conference bridge feature on users. All right, main fax box number, by default, you can have the one number. Now, unfortunately, on this account, the fax box is broken, for lack of a better word. But on your account, when you click on Edit Fax Box, you'll have two fields pop up. The first is for inbound notification, right? So you put an email address in there. That email address will get an email every time a fax comes in, letting you know, hey, you have a fax, and here's an attachment, right? They can then view that email, look at that double click on the attachment, and view the fax. The second field is for outbound permissions. Generally speaking, if you own your own company domain, right? So you own at abccleaners.com, you can put that domain in that second field, and then anybody at your company who has an email address, right, at abccleaners.com, they can send a fax out. They don't have to be a user on your Dash account. They just need to know the format, right? The +1 area code and phone number at your account realm, and then attach a PDF or a TIFF. All right, let's go to auto attendance. Now on Dash, this is a plan-specific feature, but this allows you to do a couple different things. One, you would use auto attendance to create submenus, right? So you have your main virtual receptionist, and then you could have, if you wanted submenus, like the one for English, two for Spanish, right? You would create an English and Spanish attendance, and then that would allow you to create additional menu options and greetings. And the other reason to have multiple attendants would be you have multiple businesses going into the same account, but you want each of those businesses to have their own phone number and their own greetings, right? So unique greetings, unique phone numbers for these different accounts. All right, creating an attendant, you start at the top, you give it a name, and then you give it an extension number. And literally, your staff members can transfer callers to different attendants via the extension number. And then you click on Create Attendant. Once you've created an attendant, if you click on the name here, you can delete an attendant. But you can also have the option here to make it, if you click on it, available in the main menu, or if you click on it again, unavailable. Right? So if you make it available in a main menu, that means it's available to be a submenu. Right? Versus unavailable means it's a standalone attendant, meaning probably its own business. Right? Phone numbers, you can add phone numbers directly to an attendant. You can either add it from spare or by number. If you click on the extension box, you can add extensions or remove the existing extension. And then if you click on the little red icon under settings here, you'll see here I have open hours and holidays. Now these open hours, this matches what we have set under main hours or main number, right? Same with the holidays, right? Whatever you set up under main number for your office hours and for your holidays, that will match what your attendants can do, right? So if you need these separate businesses to have their own office hours, right? So business A, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but business B is, Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7, they would at least either have to have custom routing, which means which might incur a fee, or you're going to have separate accounts. Now, if you click on the virtual receptionist here, right, you've got your menu options here. You have your same text greeting options as you did under the virtual receptionist, under main number, right? So you can add routes, etc. Now, for the attendants, they only have the option to go to the virtual receptionist. They don't have those other routing options like we had under main number. That's also something to keep in mind. All right, devices, right, shows all the devices on the account. Green means it's connected or registered. Red means it's unregistered or not connected. And if you ever see a black device, that means you've done something like this. You've disabled the device on the account. Adding a device, you can click up here at the top. You got SIP phone. Again, this is that physical device that sits on a desk or in a cabinet or something. You find the phone manufacturer, and then you look for the model that you're using, and then you give it a name, and then you enter in the MAC address of the phone. MAC address is unique to each device, typically a sticker on the back of the phone, sometimes on the box that the phone came in, or if you have power to the phone, you click under menu status, Usually you can find the MAC address listed there as well. You would then create the device and then assign it to a user. Now, in terms of the dashboard here, you are done. On the phone itself, you need to get into the phone's web user interface, the web UI. You need to enter in, you need to get to the auto revision section to enter in the URL. Basically, you enter the URL, basically tells the phone to go here. It does so. It gets its config file. It will reboot a couple times, and then it will show up as a green device. Now, for the specifics of that URL, if you go under our website, under Dash Support, on the right-hand side under VoIP phones, I think it's the 5th or 6th article down, it's adding VoIP phone, or adding auto provision phones, excuse me. You click on that article, it will show you screenshots as well as give you the URL that needs to be added into the phone. All right, next up, cell phone and landline are basically the same. So you give it a name, you put +1 area code and phone number, right, of the cell phone, for example, and then you assign it to a staff member. You click on Create Device. Now, by default, right, these are the settings for a new cell phone or landline. So when Dash sends a call to a cell phone or landline, right, the phone will ring, someone will pick up. When you first pick up, you're going to hear, "This is a forwarded call. Please press 1." Right? When you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take this call. And then it connects the call. Now, that doesn't work in every instance. For example, if when you set up this cell phone, you're actually sending it to, say, an automated answering service for your holidays or for your after hours. Well, your automated answering service can't press 1, right? Because it's automated. It doesn't know when to press that 1, much less that it needs to. So in that instance, you put a check mark here in front of allow use of cell phone's voicemail. So now, when we send a call to this phone number, right, once we hear that pickup tone, we connect the call. We're not waiting for someone to press 1. You say, "Hey, pick up, they're connected, here, send the call." And then your automated answering service takes the call from there. Now, if you do this on your actual cell phone, what can happen is your cell phone voicemail can pick up, right, if you're not able to answer the call. So that inbound caller ends up on your personal cell phone's voicemail box. Some people like that. Some people don't want that at all. All right. The other thing that comes up is keep original caller ID. So say, for instance, customer Mary is calling your Dash account, gets to your cell phone. On your cell phone's display of the caller ID, you'll see customer Mary's phone number. You don't recognize customer Mary's phone number, so you're like, "Oh, I'm not going to answer that because that's probably some weird telemarketer person." So it goes to voicemail. Now, if you uncheck keep original caller ID, right, when customer Mary calls you, your main company number shows up on your cell phone's display. And what I mean by that main company number, if we go back to the dashboard, that's this number right here under the caller ID. Whatever number you have selected here, that's what's going to show up on your cell phone's caller ID when you have keep original caller ID unchecked, right? So it's a way to let you know, oh, this is a work call coming into your personal cell phone. All right, soft phone. This is a warning message saying due to wireless technology, your soft phone may not actually be at the E911 address you have set up. So it may not be best to use the VoIP phone to call 911. And you click close, it opens up your adding a soft phone menu here. Now, we are set up here for using a third-party application, right? So a soft phone application from Counterpath, or you didn't see your VoIP phone listed under the SIP devices, so you're going to try to program it as a third-party device. So you give it a device name, then you're going to copy and paste. You don't want to change the SIP username. If you click on the SIP password box, you'll see the password. You copy and paste that, and then you copy and paste the account realm, and use those three pieces of information to program that application or that VoIP phone. Now, we do have some guides for some devices and some other applications. We don't have guides for everything out there because there's just simply too much. But hopefully there's a guide that's close that will help give you an idea of what needs to go where. Now, if you would like to use the VirtualPBX soft phone application, right here where it says use third-party application, you click on that. Now flips it to say use VirtualPBX application. You give it a device name and you assign it to a person. You click on create device. Once you click on create device, that user will get an email saying, hey, your soft phone's been created, and we'll send them their username and password. If they're going to be using it on mobile, right, so either iOS or the Android operating system, they can go to the relevant app store, download VPBX phone, use that username and password, and get logged in. And then they can make and receive calls from the application. If you're going to use the desktop version, so for Mac OS or Windows, you do need to order through the web store because there's a license fee associated with the desktop version. But then once you've done that, you'll get download links for both Mac OS and Windows. Last up, we've got web phone. Again, you get that wireless technology message. And you give it a name and you assign it to an owner. You click on create device. Once you do that, then that person can go to webphone.virtualpbx.net. They can use their Dash login information to log into that web page, and then they can use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. It's not designed for use with mobile devices at this time. All right, greetings. This is your greetings manager. You can see your different greetings on the account. That's the name. Source, TTS is text-to-speech. Upload means you uploaded the file. And recording means you recorded it over the phone. You have a download link here so you can listen to the file. And the wrench icon, you can change the name to something you recognize, or you can delete the greeting if you're not going to use it. Groups, shorthand for ring groups. If you click add a group, you give it a name, an extension number, and you click and drag the people you want to be in the group, and you will click on create group. Once you've created a group, you can click on the name. You can always change the name. And then you have the group call attempts. Basically, for the inbound caller, how many times are they allowed to ring through to try to reach one of your staff members? You got little up arrows here to the right, so you can change that as needed. If you click on the members box here, you can then determine how they're going to, or how the system's going to send calls to each of the people. Now, along the top here, you've got timing, right? Seconds. This last one here is the total ring time. So right now it's 120 seconds. I can click distribute, and that will make it even across my 4 users here. If I don't like this order, I can click and drag like that, and then click distribute again, and now Bob's my first person. These are sliders, right? So you can do things like this. This is referred to as blast ringing. All right, so I'm ringing everybody for the full time until one of them picks up. One thing to keep in mind is, let's say a call comes in and Bob picks up that call, right? And then say a second call comes in while he's assisting that first person. He will hear a call waiting beep until one of the other staff members picks up the call, that second call. So something to keep in mind. All right, groups can have extension numbers, and they can have multiple. They can also have their own phone numbers, right? You can add for spare, or by new. And then we have group features. First up is ringback. This is essentially hold music, right? So this file will play until one of my staff members pick up. I can upload my own file, right? .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. So little up arrow, and then click on Save Changes. Next action, if you enable this, basically is if no one answers, send the call to blank. In this case, I'm sending it to a voicemail box, which is fairly typical. But you can send it back to your main menu, right? So your main virtual receptionist. You can send it to one of your call queues. You can send it to a specific device. You can send it to a media file. You can send it to a group. You can send it to a specific user and voicemail boxes. Allow call forward. If you enable this, you're allowing your users to call forwarding, right? So they're not going to be at their normal desk phone, but they still want to take the group calls. They can then send it to, say, their mobile phone. Caller ID prepend. Again, this is a VoIP phone feature. You can add text or numbers in front of the caller ID, and this will show up on their VoIP phone's display. Again, this gives your staff members a heads up about what the call might be about. All right, numbers. So numbers in use shows where your numbers are going, right? Whether it's to a call flow, which typically is your faxing, a user, your main number. You'll also see like groups and etc. Spare numbers, these are the numbers you're not using. If you want to get rid of these numbers, right? You're like, oh, I'm not interested in keeping this number or any of these, let's say. Right, once you click on the box in front of them, you got the little option here to delete. It's asking you, are you sure you want to do this? Click on delete numbers. And now the system says, yes, you remove these numbers. Click on continue. So now this list is shorter, and I just saved myself some money every month. You can buy numbers here, right, local or toll-free. And this will just add those numbers as your spare number list. And so then you can add them other places. Port, this starts the port process. You give it a name. You choose local or toll-free. And then it's going to ask you to upload a file. In this case, the billing, a recent copy of the bill. It'll also give you the opportunity to download a blank letter of agency, or LOA, as well as upload a completed and signed LOA. And then you submit both documents to our porting team. So if you go through the dash process here for porting, you'll get an automated email once you've submitted via the portal saying, hey, you've submitted. Then within the next business day, you should get a second email from our porting team directly saying, yes, we got your documents, and here's what to expect about the porting process. That second email lets you know, yes, your port is really in process at this time. Now, if for some reason your files won't upload properly, or you click submit and it says fail, or it doesn't seem like it went all the way through, you can send your copy of your bill and your completed and signed LOA to porting, PORTING, at VirtualPBX.com, and our porting team will still process the port. Now, if we get it in both versions, we'll say, yeah, we did get it, so we'll go ahead and process one. We're not going to process it twice. For the LOA, right, the letter of agency, it's going to ask you for company information, right? So company name and address. That information should match what the current carrier has on file for you. So say, for instance, you are porting from AT&T to VirtualPBX. Whatever AT&T has on file for that phone number, that's the company information and address that should be there, right? It does ask for a signature, so it does need to be signed. It can be a digital signature, right? It doesn't have to, you don't have to print it out and have someone physically sign it. But you simply just can't retype someone's name in that signature field because that will get rejected. Generally speaking, toll-free numbers take about 3 to 5 business days, assuming everything is correct. Local numbers can be as short as 1 day, so like a Google Voice number that you've already unlocked. That typically ports by the next business day, at least from what I've seen recently. But local numbers can also take up to 2 to 3 weeks. And again, that assumes nothing is wrong. If there is something wrong, right? Like say we'll get a message from the other carrier saying, address incorrect or mismatch, or name mismatch, something like that. We don't get the specific details, right? So if like the address is incorrect, they're not going to tell us, oh, you have too many digits, or it's like 10053 is the incorrect address. They're not going to tell us that. They're just going to say address zip code mismatch. That's all we can tell you because that's all we have, right? So then at that point, you have to go back to the current carrier and say, what's the information I need to port this phone number, right? Typically referred to as a customer service record or phone service record. All right, users. To add a user, you click up here at Add User. You enter in a name, and then an email address used for login. This needs to be unique for each user. Then you create a password, and then you assign them an extension. Now, on this system, I started with extension 1000, and it's telling me that extension 1008 is the next available one. But I can change this, right? I can make it 7520. Like, let's say, for one of my new auto attendants I created, anyone associated with that company, I'm starting them or putting them in the extension 7000 range. And then you've got these 4 options down here. The first one's automatically checked, which is create the voicemail box for the user. And that voicemail box is intrinsically tied to that user, meaning, for example, from my VoIP phone, I can hit *98, and that's going to send me directly to this voicemail box that was created. All right. Include in the company directory, put a check mark if you want them in there, or leave it blank if you don't. You can always change that later. Send email to an alternate address. So if you enter in a different email address here, this will supersede this email address up here for login in terms of where we send voicemail messages, password reset, soft phone credentials, anything like that. But you would still use this email address used for login to log into the dashboard. And probably the most important one, send credentials to this user. And then you click on create user if you're only adding one. If you're adding multiple people, you're going to click on create user and add another. Once a user is created, you can click on their name. You can change their name. You can click on change credentials, so you can change their password or their email address. You also have the option here to send them the password reset link. Right, so if I have trouble with a colleague that I created passwords for, if they just can't remember the passwords I create for them, I can click on that and they can create their own. Voicemail box pins. For your VoIP phone users, you don't have to set up a PIN number for them because they can do that *98. And that first time they log in like that, the system will prompt them to create a PIN number as well as create a voicemail greeting. For your cell phone or landline users, you will need to create a PIN number for them. All right, here's you got the option for the send to alternate address as well as up here in the user directory. Sorry about that. Let me get back to this. Over here on the right is a drop down, so you can make a user into an admin or an admin back into a user. You change the time zone. This is the display language, so English, French, German, or Russian. You've got the ringing timeout. Let me go to, let's see if Bob has that highlighted still. There we go. All right, so by default, when you create a new user, they have a 20-second ringing timeout. This is how much time the system tries to send a call to the devices on that user. Right, and then if no one picks up, then it goes to voicemail. And then you've got the extension number as well as the privacy settings. I don't think I mentioned this. The gray person icon, that's your standard user. Blue suit is an admin. Users can have multiple extensions if you want them to. Right, just click on add extension number and enter that extension number. They can have their own phone numbers, add from spare or buy new. They can have their own devices. So you can add it from spare. You can add new devices. You got the same options here. All right, and I just click on Save Changes. And then we have user features. Caller ID number. This only works for users that have their own phone number, but when you turn it on, when they make outbound calls, their phone number shows up as the caller ID instead of the main company number. Call forwarding, you have off, on, and failover mode. Off means you're not using it. On means you are. Now, this is something your users can set up themselves. They can either set it up on the user portal, right? That's for just them. And if they're VoIP phone users, they can set it up off of the VoIP phones using feature codes. But again, you select either a mobile or desk phone. You put +1 area code and phone number, and then you click on Save Changes. Now, this phone number should not already be a device on the user, right? So whatever I'm forwarding to is something I don't use every day, right? So if I'm expecting to take calls on my cell phone every day, that should just be a device. Whereas if I'm forwarding it, that means I'm sending it to calls that I only use sporadically. Now, failover is for VoIP phone users, right? So if the system detects that your VoIP phone is offline, then it will automatically forward an incoming call to your forwarding device. Hot desking is also a VoIP feature. It's designed for use when you're in a shared office environment where you might be sitting at a different desk from day to day or even within the same shift, right? So basically you sit down at the beginning of your shift, you pick up the handset of the VoIP phone at that desk, you hit *11, that turns on hot desking, and then the system will prompt you to enter in your hot desk ID and PIN number if your admin selected to use a PIN number. And then from that point on, the system will tell you calls will be sent to this device. So now anyone trying to call your user will ring the phone you're sitting at, right? Whether that's because you're in ring groups or queues or what have you. End of my day, I pick up the phone, I hit *12, that turns off hot desking, right? The next day I come in, right? I was sitting at desk 7 yesterday. Today, desk 7, someone's already sitting there. So I'm like, okay, well, desk 52, you're it. Do the same thing. Hit *11, enter in my PIN, or my hot desk ID and my PIN, and now I'm getting calls. Voicemail box is green because the voicemail box was created at the same time as the user. Fax box, you can have your users have their own fax boxes so they can have inbound faxing directly to them. You can select a phone number or an extension. I typically recommend having a phone number assigned to a fax box. If you choose an extension, because you don't want to add another phone number to your account, for example, one, you need to find an extension that's not already being used, right? So you can do a search. You can go through the list here, seeing what extensions are in use. When you find one, you enter that extension number here and click on Select Extension. Now, when you do that, the person who's sending you a fax needs to call the main number, and when they hear the main greeting, then they need to hit that fax extension, and then they need to hit Send Fax. Not everyone is going to do that, just because most people are creatures of habit, so they just go to a fax machine, enter number, hit Send Fax, and walk away, get their cup of coffee. And email or fax services may not allow you to do that. There may not be an option to add an extension. So that's something to be aware of. Conference Bridge, when you enable that, then the system defaults to make the conference room match their extension number. And then as an admin, you do need to create a PIN number for them. And then click on Save Changes. Now, your users can change their PIN number themselves via the user portal. Follow me. This is for user with multiple devices. In fact, here, let's set this back to disabled. And then we'll re-enable it here. So when you first enable it, this is how it looks, because it doesn't know which devices you want to ring on. Notice up here, again, you got timestamps, and your total ring time is defaulted to 120. So for any device you want to use, we'll just use all three in this case, you uncheck it, and then they have a ring time of 0. Now, I can click Distribute, right? So now I'm ringing in this order. I can change the order around, right? Kind of like we showed in green groups. And then these are sliders. So I can adjust it as I see fit. Music on hold. If you enable this, each of your users can have their own hold music if you want them to. Again, you can upload .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Click on the upload button there. Customize call recording. So if you want to do call recording, so when you first enable it, it looks like this, right? Because you have to decide which kinds of calls you want to record, right? So inbound internal means coworker Bob called me, right? Inbound external means customer Angela called me, right? Outbound internal means I called coworker Bob back. Outbound external means I called customer Angela back. And then you click on Save Changes. And then Do Not Disturb means send callers to voicemail. All right, voicemail boxes, right, shows all the voicemail boxes on the account. If they're a user voicemail box, it'll show up here. You can create your own voicemail boxes here, for instance, for use with your ring groups or your queues. You need to give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number. And then you would click on Create Voicemail Box. Once you've done that, you click on the little wrench icon. So creating media, you want to upload a file to a manually created voicemail box. You can also call in to that manually created voicemail box. So dial your main number, hit *97 on your phone. The system will ask you for the voicemail box number and then the PIN number, and then you can record it over the phone. The temporary file here, this is for like vacation voicemail message, right, or out of office for a conference, right? So you would upload or record over the phone. Actually, you have to upload. I don't think there's an option to select it as a temporary. But once you've uploaded a file that's in the temporary slot here, this will supersede the media file until as an admin you come back and you set this back to none. Once you have a media file in place for a manually created voicemail box, you do want to add a recipient. Right? You just put in the email address and click on Add. For your user voicemail boxes, they already have one recipient email address in place, right? The email used for login, they're automatically getting that. But if someone else needs to get those voicemails, you can add that as well. And then you've got the options. All right, so once you have the media file and the recipients, you can click on Already Set Up. And then a couple others of note are these two here. So by default, voicemail boxes on Dash can hold up to 100 voicemail messages. Once you get to 100, anyone who tries to call in will get a message saying, voicemail box is full, please try again later. Right, then at some point, you need to go log in as an admin and get rid of those messages before anyone else can leave a new voicemail. What we typically recommend is put check mark after delete after notification. So by default, the system's going to send an email to you, right, or to the user, and that email is going to include the attachment where they can just double click on and listen to the voicemail messages. So if you have delete after notification enabled, that means that voicemail box won't ever be full, because once we send out that email, the system then goes and deletes that voicemail from that user's voicemail box. And then the attached messages to email, again, this is checked by default. If for some reason you don't want your staff to have their voicemails delivered to them via email, then you can uncheck this. That way they'll just get a notification saying, hey, you have a voicemail message, but there won't actually be an attachment. All right, advanced routing. For most customers, this would come up for if they want to make use of direct inward system access. What this does, it allows a cell phone or landline user to call into the system to log in and then make an outbound call. And when they make that outbound call, their caller ID will not be their cell phone or their landline. It'll instead be the main company number. So if you want to make use of this, one, for new signups, you're going to need to send in a request to activate it, just because this is a potential, there's potential for fraud if people are figure out your PIN number, right, as well as the extension. But what you would do is you click on this to add an extension to it, save changes. You can also create your own PIN number. So now your staff member calls into a main number that goes to the virtual receptionist. When they hear the reading play, they enter in this extension number. The system will then prompt them to enter in a PIN number, right? It's right here. When they do that, they'll hear dial tone again, and they enter in area code and phone number, and then they make that outbound call. And again, the caller ID that would show up on that outbound call is going to be the main number, not their cell phone number. And let me go ahead and disable that. All right, call logs. This shows your call history on the account. Green arrow to the right means that's an inbound call that came into the system. And you see here, it reached out to these devices. And if there's a yellow arrow to the left, that means it's an outbound call. This little hydrant icon, right, you can click on this. This will create an email with the technical details of the call. And that email is directed to support@virtualpbx.com. I would advise that you should type in the body of that email what you experienced or didn't experience. That way it gives our support team an idea of what went wrong, right? And then they can take a closer look. You typically should see normal clearing. That just means the call entered normally, right? Allocated timeout or allotted timeout means the ring duration, right, or the ringing timeout time was hit, and that's why the call wasn't connected. And then originated cancel means the inbound caller hung up. All right, feature, oh, oops, let me go back. You can also download the whole file as a CSV. If you do custom, you can enter in your day range as well. All right, feature codes. I've mentioned a couple of these already. These are just dial pad shortcuts to make use of different features. These are also published on the support pages under virtualpbx.com, so you don't have to log in to view these all. And that web page actually has explanations or further explanations in case you need it. Also, if you haven't noticed, anytime you see a little question mark icon, you can mouse over it, and that will give you additional details. All right, so that's everything that's under the dashboard, which is where we've been. Let's go over to ACD queues. ACD stands for Automatic Call Distribution. It's a call center feature. These are generally considered a more powerful version of ring groups, mostly because they have different routing options. Creating a new queue, you would just click on Add New Queue, and I'll just click on the gear icon here for an existing queue. So you give it a name, and then a queue can have either a phone number or an extension. Now, on a ring group, right, you can have both. So that's, I guess, one advantage technically for a ring group. The major limitation currently on queues is that you can only accept calls with a VoIP device in a queue. In a ring group, you can get calls on a cell phone, landline, or a VoIP phone, whereas on a queue currently, you can only accept calls with a VoIP device. The configuration here of the queue, the routing strategy, there's 5 basic options. So first is ring all, so it rings everybody. Next up is round robin, which equalizes out over time. And we got the one that's displaying here, most idle. So whoever's been waiting for the call the longest gets the next call that comes in. Then you have least offered. So let's say Bob and Mary are logged into my queue. Bob's been offered 20 calls. Mary's been offered 5 calls. Under least offered, the next call that comes in goes to Mary. Related to that is least calls. This means least amount of connected calls. So in that 20 and 5 scenario, we'll say that, of the 20 calls Bob's been offered, he's spoken to 2 people. Of the 5 calls that Mary's been offered, she's spoken to all 5. Under least calls, the next call that comes in goes to Bob and will continue until he equals Mary or until someone else logs in. All right, hold treatment. You can upload a music file, .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono. Queue timeout, measured in seconds. This is how much time a person can wait on hold in the queue. Queue call limit, you can limit the number of people who are in the queue. And this is on top of who's already speaking to staff members, right? So if I have 2 staff members who are logged in and talking to inbound callers, I can have an additional 4 people waiting on hold. If I change this to 0, that means there would be no limit. Timeout immediately if empty. So if you have no agents logged in and a call comes in, then I'm saying treat it as if this timer is already right. So they've treated as if they've already been waiting for 3,600 seconds. The escalation queue, if you have this enabled and going to another queue, basically means all my staff members are on a call. Call comes in. The system realizes, hey, they're busy on active calls. I'm going to send this caller to a second queue to see if someone else can pick up. And then the escalation call flow after timeout, right? And then you have the options here to send it to queues, voicemail boxes. You can send it to users. You can send it to a media file. You can send it to a ring group, back to the directory, specific device, etc. But basically, when the 3,600 second timeout happens, you're sending it to this, in this case, this voicemail box. This would also apply to anything that went to the overflow queue, right? So if I had another queue selected here, once this 3,600-second timeout starts as soon as the call or the inbound caller enters this specific queue. And once that timer ends, it gets sent to this voicemail box, even if they're in the overflow queue. All right, agent behavior, agent recovery time measured in seconds. After they're done with a queue call, the system will give them, in this case, 30 seconds before it will offer them another call in from this queue. Right, so it gives them time to get a sip of water or finish off their notes in the CRM application, etc. Force away on reject or missed. So if an agent misses a call, the system will, if enabled, will put them in away mode, meaning they're not going to be offered any calls until they mark themselves ready again. And then agent connect timeout, measured in seconds. This is how much time we're trying to reach an agent in their devices. And because they can only use web devices, 20 seconds is plenty of time. Now this is a standard ACD queue, which is, I believe, starts at $15 per month, depending on plan. There's also ACD Queues Pro, which starts at $99 per month, depending on the plan. So that's something else to keep in mind. In terms of members, over here on the left, we click on the little person with the headset. So these are all the people who are available in my call center. I click on Manage Members. The people on the left, these are standard users. The people on the right, these are people who can be in queues, right? If I want to add someone, I just click on their name and then add them as a member. Oh, this is telling me he's actually associated with the Pro queue. So let's go with Hatake. Right, and there's Hatake over there. Now, once they're in the members list, if you go back to my queues, right, you see I'm already in. If I go to agents, right, I can see my assigned agents, and I can add Hatake over, for example, and then, now, unfortunately, my save button's cut off, but then he can then be added. So anyone who's in the overall queue member list can be added to any individual queue. Now, once you have agents in a queue, you can also click on managers here, and then you can make any of them managers within that queue itself. All right, let me end this session real quick here. Now, for your staff members who you assign to queues, right? So first, they would mouse over the little menu icon here, go to ACD queues. They would click on Begin Session. It puts them in away mode, right? So then they have to say, mark themselves as ready. So now they're ready to take calls. Back here, right, when they're marked as away, you'll see they're red, whereas when they're ready, they're green. If they're on a call, this turns to blue. If they're on an outbound call or external call, they'll be yellow. And if they're on wrap-up time, they'll be gold. Up here, the little phone icon, you select the device that you want to receive calls on. And again, it should be a VoIP device on the queues. And then at the end of the day, they would just click End Session and log out. Right, blacklist. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you want to block from contacting your system. Right, so you would click on Edit Lists. If you don't have one already, you would click Add to create a new list. Otherwise, you can select an existing list. You would give it a name. If you turn on Block Anonymous, that means if we don't get valid inbound caller ID and you turn this on, that means that those anonymous phone calls won't be able to reach your system. They just get busy tone. And then under add number, you put +1 area code and phone number, and just clicking add for each additional phone number you want to add to the list. Then you would click save. You go click on back to settings, and then you make sure that list is over here on the right under selected. You would click update. And so now any phone number on these two lists, when they try to call into my system, they get a busy tone. Right? They're simply not going to connect. All right, sorry about that. Had to mute myself for a little bit there. All right, let's go on to faxes. So as an admin, you can get to any fax box on the account. You can see their fax status, or see if they have any existing faxes. You can see their outbound faxes. And then the email to fax logs, you see a thumbs down from this person to this phone number. If you click on the little eyeball here, this tells you why, right? In this case, this email address isn't on this account. That's why they weren't able to fax out. All right, the monitor, this is also available depending on the plan, but you can see the status of your staff members. Again, green, waiting for a call, blue on an inbound call, red, marked away, yellow, external call, gold on wrap-up time. Number manager takes you back to your spare numbers list, so you can add numbers, remove numbers, etc. The recording manager, this takes you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. That uses your Dash login, so you can see your recordings. You can download them, play them, delete them. Reports, this is actually advanced reporting, so it's you can create your own reports. This is actually a plan-specific or add-on feature. If that's something you're interested in, you want to talk to our account services team. They can let you know what kind of pricing is involved, as well as get you set up on a training for that. Voicemails. This gets you to any voicemail box on the account. You can see any messages they may have and listen to them, delete them, download them, etc. Webhooks, this allows Dash to link with APIs, so you can link it to other software. If you're interested in that, you actually need to speak to our sales team. They have some qualifying information and some additional guides available. You can also look at developer.virtualpbx.com to see some samples of what we've linked Dash with ourselves in the past. User portal. So every user has their own user portal, so you can only get to your own. So voicemails would only show up if you've unchecked delete after notification. All right. Call history shows your inbound and outbound call history. Faxes would show your fax history. The contact list is everything within Dash, right? So all your users, your ring groups, your attendants, etc. This is not something your staff can add to on their own, right? So like your salespeople would not be able to add their client list to this, right? This is just within your Dash account. Conference, this is where users manage their conference. Here they can, over on the right, they can adjust their PIN numbers, as well as their, people come in muted or deafened, as well as playing entry and exit tones. Up here, right, you can invite people to join your conference, right? So you can invite other Dash users to your conference. You can mock a conference. You can mute everybody. You can unmute everybody. You can end the call. When you're actually within a conference on individual participants, you can mute a specific person as well as kick a specific person. And then settings and devices, right? So this is where a user would set up their own call forwarding and where they want it to go, as well as see the status of their current devices. And that is everything. I'll hang out here for a minute or so to see if anyone has any questions via chat. But if you don't, then feel free to enjoy the rest of your day. All right, not seeing any questions coming through, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thank you for your time today, and we'll see you next Tuesday.